crowd.
We have a lot of senators and a lot of people from Congress. I'm going to introduce a few of them that are really outstanding, and they are warriors and they're great patriots. Senator Eric Schmitt. Where's Eric Schmitt? He's around here someplace. Nice, tall, handsome guy. Thank you, Eric. What a great job you've done. He helps us so much with the Senate, and we've got a great Senate. We have to get a couple of more senators elected. I think it's going to happen.
Joining us now, the nice, tall, handsome senator from the state of Missouri, Senator Schmitt. Good to have you back with us, sir.
It's great to be with you. I made sure my wife heard that, by the way.
Yeah, you got to make that her ringtone or something.
I'll take what I can get, right?
That's awesome. Great to have you. So what was that like being with President Trump? I was just saying to my producer, Corey, I was like, it's a national disgrace that it takes President Trump to remind everyone that have now been multiple assassination attempts on him. But he got up there and he gave that rally on Saturday. And man, from where I'm sitting, it looked like one of the biggest, most energetic rallies ever.
It was incredible. I was on the plane with President Trump, and we did a flyover before we landed, and then drove to Butler from Pittsburgh, where we landed. And we could see the crowd. You saw the number of cars. I mean, there were over 100,000 people there. I mean, there's just nobody, Vince, as you know, there's nobody in American politics, or I don't know anywhere in the world, really, quite frankly, that could pull in 100,000 people for a rally like that. And it was significant, I think, for a couple of reasons. First, it was very important that President Trump acknowledged Corey and his family, the firefighter who died tragically that day. And getting off the plane, it was the first people that he greeted, his wife and two daughters. And hopefully it was special for them, too, to know that he's not forgotten in that we were returning there. And we don't want to end on that note and making sure that evil doesn't win. Yeah. And it was very special. Ave Maria played. And anyway, it was very moving. It was very moving, that piece of it. The second piece, I think, too, is that President Trump's resilient. This country is resilient. I think everybody's looking for a brighter day, and that day, I think, was symbolic that President Trump came within, millimeters of losing his life that day. And, of course, you've got the other incident a month later, or I should say 2 months later. And it's just, I think to me, this race, this election means so much more than just two individual candidates. It's about, America sort of restoring our greatness, and President Trump leading the charge, after the blood spewing down his face that day to being back there in Butler in front of 100,000 people was just pretty special.
Among the people who spoke, and I'm going to play some more audio coming up later in the show to this effect, but was Eric Trump. Eric Trump brought up the fact that he said there have been all sorts of efforts to stop his father in politics. And he went through the big list that you and I both know, everything from the Steele dossier to the multiple impeachments to the endless persecutions by Democrat lawyers across the country. And he also said that there have been now multiple assassination attempts against his father, which, of course, is true. The media went absolutely crazy this weekend, as they often do, about this subject, Senator Schmitt. And they suggested that it was totally out of bounds to say that Democrats had some sort of responsibility to police their own tone when it came to what they've been saying about President Trump. What do you make of Democrat rhetoric as it relates to Trump and the extent to which that may inflame the passions of especially mentally imbalanced people?
Well, I think we've learned that Trump derangement syndrome is real, and a lot of these folks on the left have just been completely broken. Between President Trump and COVID, it just changed so much of what the Democrats like to talk about norms, and they talk about rules, and they talk about they don't adhere to any of those things, and just days after both assassination attempts, continuing to refer to him as an existential threat to the country. You've got senators saying this. You've got quote unquote threats to democracy. The real threat to democracy, this is all projection. It's all projection. The real threats to democracy, there's only one political party that's tried to kick off their opponent off the ballot. There's only one political party that tried to jail him for the rest of his life. There's only one political party that's engaged in a vast censorship enterprise that, in the case that I brought, Missouri versus Biden, was totally exposed. And then with Elon Musk buying Twitter, all of it was exposed. That's not normal. Like, this stuff that's happening right now, I think, is sort of the maturation of the left's movement, which is now exclusively about power and control. This isn't about winning a debate about marginal tax rates, Vince. This is about them adding states to the union, bringing 15 million people here and converting them into voters. This is about, the packing the United States Supreme Court. These are not typical debates. And when they use that language, they're not stopping. There's no speed bump, I think. And I think it's so important for him to get elected. It's so important. He's a disruptor. And we need that right now against this alignment between the media, the Democrats, and permanent Washington.
Yeah,
and we need a real reset.
And you can tell that Democrats know they almost seem inconvenienced by the election. They're like, oh, crap, we have to appeal to the voters, which is why you hear Kamala Harris has been saying lately, oh, we need to get control of the border, she says. The borders are now claiming. She says things like, oh, we need no tax on tips. Oh, we need to cut taxes for the middle class. All of a sudden, she's having these realizations that seem to be suspiciously aligned with her electoral ambitions.
She's not flip-flopping. She's just lying. And they will say and do anything to just get past these 30 days. And then it'll be business as usual. They'll go back to the supercharged administrative state that doesn't care about your liberty or anything. It'll just, not that long ago, OSHA, which was an agency created to make sure forklifts beeped when they back up, was trying to force a medical procedure on 100 million Americans with the shot. I mean, they are willing, under the guise of a quote-unquote emergency to do just about anything, right? And so they just know they got to get through this. They have an empty vessel in Kamala Harris who's willing to do all that, but we know her real record. She destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California, and she wants to destroy this country with these policies. And so you see her now. They're panicking a little bit, Vince. You notice a kind of a shift this week. They know it's not working. The numbers don't look good for them in places like Pennsylvania. And she's going to be doing more of these interviews. The problem is it's a spiral for them because once she's exposed, it's kind of like the backup quarterback. Like everybody kind of thinks the backup quarterback can do better. And then when you put the backup quarterback in a big game, you realize why the backup quarterback is actually the backup quarterback. And I think we're about to enter a new phase of this campaign where she's totally exposed if people didn't see it already.
Also, it strikes me that Kamala Harris is now doing a media blitz. Look, she's doing all these interviews is like completely over the top for a bunch of reasons. One of them is that they're all by and large very compliant organizations that she's going to speak to. Like she just did an interview on a sex podcast yesterday called Call Her Daddy. And then she just did an interview with 60 Minutes, which has always been nice to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert she's doing this week. Right. The View, imagine how hard-hitting that's going to be. That's tomorrow. The Howard Stern Show, that guy has completely lost his mind. He's just a fire-breathing Democrat. So Eric Schmitt, what kind of media blitz is this?
But here's the thing. She's not even good in those, Vince. Like she doesn't even perform well in those. And I think the broader, the country, because there's still, look, your feelings towards President Trump by and large are relatively set. There's still a lot of people who are trying to figure out Kamala Harris, right? Like they're trying to figure out who she is, and it's not going well, right? And so this is only going to exacerbate those issues because when she starts talking about policy, she can't really pull it off. And if she does, and we're true to her who she really is, it's way out of step. I mean, taxpayer-funded sex change operation for illegal immigrants. Okay? She believes in that. She's on record saying that. Like, she's okay with open borders. She doesn't think we should be deporting anyone, which is, by the way, been the policy of the United States, Republican and Democrat, for centuries. And this is kind of, again, they've gotten to this place now. I mean, she was contributing to that bail fund in Minnesota, which, of course, Tim Walz was the governor. And many of those people who were let out in the George Floyd riots have committed violent crimes since. So she is who she is, and I think people are going to figure it out. And I think President Trump being in Butler, Pennsylvania, the iconic image of this election, when people look back 30 years from now, Vince, it's his fist pump, fight with the American flag in the backdrop. And I think his return to that place, they don't even like to talk about it because it humanizes him. So your beginning question, which was, why don't they ever talk about this and the assassination attempts? Because it makes him a human being. And they can't call him literally Hitler or whatever the phrase of the week is that they want to try to assign to him if he's actually a human being. And he is.
Well, and that behavior, of course, is tearing the country apart, which is just awful. Yep. Senator Schmitt, you talk about the campaign and you just mentioned a theme that I think is really interesting. That Kamala Harris is for sex change surgeries on illegal aliens who are in detention, and for criminals too, for that matter, here in the United States. That has become a theme in what appears to be a very effective Donald Trump campaign ad. I was watching some of the football games this weekend, and that ad kept coming up, which is a clear sign that the Trump campaign knows this is an effective line of attack. All of these interviews that Kamala Harris is now undertaking, all of a sudden, that seems to indicate to me that there's a bit of a panic going on inside of her campaign. What is your, if to the extent that you can be objective on this question, what is your assessment of sort of what is going on between these two presidential campaigns right now?
Well, I think, I spoke at the convention, and I think that was, that was just a mere few days after the assassination attempt. I think everybody there felt like very positive, and then they do the switcheroo. And I think if you're going to be patient, and I said it on shows, like you're going to kind of have to wait till Labor Day, after Labor Day, for this campaign to reset and become a real campaign again, because the coup that they instituted on Joe Biden and the sugar high and all the favorable media, you kind of had to let that pass. And so now we're 30 days into that with 30 days to go. And what do we know? We know that people compare what their situation was in their life. This is a unique circumstance where you have a former President Trump running again, and things were going really well. And people know that. And as much as Kamala Harris and others try to scare people about Donald Trump, they know that gas is cheaper. They know the grocery bill is cheaper. They know that buying a house is, half of what the cost is to do it now. All those things are real in people's lives. And then you put that up against what her actual record was. And remember, Vince, she ran in 2020, took all these crazy positions, and never made it to Iowa. Like, so she wasn't some phenomenon, Barack Obama meets, Elvis Presley or something. Like, no one was excited about that. Yeah. She didn't make it to Iowa. And so she's not a particularly good candidate. Her policy positions are way out of step with America. And the challenge is now, for the next 30 days, to hammer those points home so people remember who she actually is. And I think the taxpayer-funded sex change operations for illegal immigrants is emblematic. It's one thing, but it's emblematic of how radical she really is. And I think that is starting to catch on.
Senator Schmitt, finally, how do you view the Biden-Harris administration and the way they're handling these storms? Hurricane Helene just savaged the southeast United States. That area is still picking up the pieces, still doing rescue recovery efforts now. Meanwhile, Hurricane Milton is now barreling towards the Gulf Coast. How has the Biden-Harris administration handled this, in your view?
It's a total disgrace, and it actually sort of brings to light what they've done to government institutions that are actually supposed to work in a disaster. What are they focused on? DEI policy. And now, in an ultimate sort of tone deafness, Kamala Harris just tweeted out 2 days ago announcing $180 million in addition to the $200 million that had already been sent to Lebanon. It is they live in this bubble, Vince, where they don't fully appreciate the circumstances of everyday people. That's what the Democrat Party is now. And so the suffering that people have, they weren't allowing private enterprise, like Elon Musk had a chance to meet him backstage at the rally too. And you've got a situation where Starlink wasn't being made available. They were blocking these sorts of things that could help people. So it's total dysfunction. And it's what happens when your focus on government is all this sort of stuff that people get upset about. Again, like DEI and endless money for foreign countries, but nothing for folks back here. And so this America First agenda resonates with people. They know it, which is why they're so desperate to try to dismiss every criticism as so-called misinformation and disinformation. And if they had it their way, if it wasn't for the lawsuit and some of the other things that happened a couple of years ago, they'd be censoring speech with these big tech platforms. The government will be doing it. They might be doing some of it now, but they can't do it to the extent that they were, which is why these fights are so important for us to engage in and win, and why the election's so important in, 29 days.
It definitely is. Senator Eric Schmitt, thank you for your time today. Good to talk to you as always.